Today's episode is part of a mini series with a student of mine who has a lot of curious questions about circadian rhythms, how the body works, and we had a really good long conversation. So you'll hear this in multiple parts. Stay tuned. Well, welcome to the Clock Tips Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Melissa Richardson. Thanks for joining us. So, welcome to the Clock Tips podcast. Today, my guest is David Arcomensa. He is a pre-med major and Spanish minor. And I actually met him about 2 years ago when he came to talk to me about my research in my lab and that he was interested in joining and learning more about circadian rhythm. So, we're going to talk about that and maybe a little bit more today. So, welcome, David.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Richardson.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about how you felt about circadian rhythms when you first came and I started to explain to you. What did you know before that point, and what was your impression when you first learned about circadian rhythms?
Okay, cool. So, initially, when I came interested in participating in the research with you, I was foreign to what circadian rhythms were. I didn't know anything about them until two other students that were working alongside you in your research started to reel me into the idea of the circadian rhythm and the 24-hour clock that is within us internally, which is something that I never was aware of, and how that can impact us in terms of our sleep and our eating patterns and just our overall functionality. I was interested in the model, the animal model that was being used, and how that can be used to replicate or study how it would affect us as humans. And kind of being there, seeing the different, because you had a large array of, I believe the correct term is the test subjects or
Yeah,
the mice that were being used.
yeah, you can say that.
Oh yes, and seeing how the different groups were affected depending on how much light or darkness they were being given, and if it was fragmented or if it was kept normal. I thought it was very interesting. I started looking at that as to me myself, like, okay, this is something that can impact me as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my initial.
Okay, so how is this for yourself? Did you start thinking about how your life is controlled or regulated by circadian rhythms? Like, what was the transition for you in that sense?
I'm interested in like the endocrine system, right?
Mm.
It's something that kind of jumped out at me was how the 24-hour cycle, this circadian rhythm, how it impacted our appetite.
Ah.
Because it was very common for college students to eat late night, and not necessarily think about, well, this is going to disrupt my sleep.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to disrupt the hormonal balance that I have and possibly cause health conditions later down the line.
Mm-hmm.
I would say I never ate late. I have eaten late. Um, Learning that aspect or seeing that aspect in the sense where eating late or eating food after hours can disturb or allow a hormonal response to reduce the amount of glucose that enters into your blood and ultimately disturb, have that kind of throw off your body's internal clock. I took that personally, and
Yeah.
I started focusing on making sure I wasn't eating late. And so I have a question because
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if it seems like the time that we go to bed
Mm-hmm.
is almost either as important or more important than the amount of hours we get to sleep. And so, if an individual, let's say, who doesn't they don't go to bed at a consistent time, right?
Uh-huh.
And maybe they go to bed at 12 or at 2 or at 8, but they're getting their 8 hours. Would it would it still throw off their clock, or would it still be unhealthy per se? Would it be negative?
Yeah. The answer is yes. So your body knows what time it is outside. So the internal body circadian system is coordinated by external factors such as the solar day-night cycle. So when the sun comes up and when it goes down. And so that 24-hour day, we can't really hide from it, if we live in a normal place. And our body knows when in that cycle is best for us to sleep. So when you think about people who have like work at night, they might want to try to sleep during the day, but they're always fighting their body that wants to tell them to sleep at night. And people like that tend to have more health issues too, compared to people who sleep at night. That, studies have shown. So the time of day actually does matter, not just the consistency of when you go to sleep, like let's say 3 p.m. every afternoon for 8 hours. It actually matters that you go during the nighttime.
So, um, is it impossible, or is it possible to reset that clock? For the example, the person who works at night, maybe they do a 10-hour shift at night, and they're up and they're exposed to light because they're in establishment where they're working. But then, and then in the day they sleep. The body will still be able to sense that this isn't correct.
Right.
Put themselves in their environment where it's like blackout shades,
Yeah, yeah. Unless it's something like, so you might have heard of jet lag, right? And how you go to a different part of the planet and, the sun is coming up at a different time. So unless your environment is so ultra controlled where your body has no idea what the day-night cycle is outside, it's going to be really hard for you to just go based on your artificial environment to try to say, this is my new, cycle based on the environment. So as long as you have that sunlight slash nighttime, no sunlight outside coming into your brain, it's going to say, oh, this is not right if you're going based on artificial lighting schedules.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's like something innate then, right? Or something.
Yes, it's definitely innate. So, and this differs depending on the type of organism you are. So, when
Mm.
it comes to the environment, you have what's known as diurnal organisms, which humans and dogs would fall under that. So, we're awake during the day and we go to sleep at night, right? And then you have mice, for example, the ones that we study in the lab, and they are nocturnal, which means at nighttime is when they wake up, and in the daytime they go to sleep. And then there are other organisms that are known as crepuscular, and they are the ones that, when it comes to sunset and sunrise, that's the time they get active, and the rest of the time they're pretty like chill.
Got you. And do you know like the difference between, for example, us as diurnal organisms
Hmm.
and mice being nocturnal, the differences in our anatomy that cause for that
You
being?
know, that's a great question. I haven't been able to find a paper on that. Maybe I should look a little harder, but I haven't been able to figure it out. But I will tell you this, if you are intrinsically nocturnal or diurnal, switching is not something that seems to happen. And there was a case study I heard of earlier this year at a conference of a girl who um she has maybe a mutation or something in her genome, but she is nocturnal. She's actually nocturnal.
Really?
And yeah, she has a lot of struggles in life right now,
Oh,
but her body's like fighting against what's typical, and it's very interesting to hear about it. But yeah, there's something in our brains that make us want to be awake in the morning and mice want to be awake at night. That's all I know about it, at least.
well, that sounds like a very interesting case in terms of the case study you just gave.
Oh
And
yeah,
but that means so naturally at night she's
up.
vibrant. Like the light outside doesn't affect her per se.
No, it does. It makes her want to go to sleep in the day.
Makes her sleepy. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually sounds kind of difficult. I ain't gonna lie.
Yeah. So she's, completely opposite of everybody, around her probably. So,
Dr. Anderson, we talk about this term, circadian rhythm, and I've gotten the chance. I've listened to some of your podcasts. Uh,
great.
uh, I wanted to get a better idea of what exactly are we referring to in the body, because I believe it's something to do with the cells or genes being translated within the cells at a specific point in time that
Mhm.
affects the clock. I don't know if you'd be able to open that up a little bit.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So, circadian rhythms are again like a 24-hour clock system, and that's just a general way to describe it. But how it actually comes to be is that scientists have discovered that at the level of the cell, there are certain genes and proteins that are produced in a cyclical manner every approximately 24 hours. So these proteins and genes, how they're being transcribed and translated, um, pretty much is in a loop, which means that when one set gets transcribed and translated, it's like highly expressed, and then it's going to like activate others, and then in turn it gets inactivated in about 24 hours later. So there's this cycle of highly expressed and then lowly expressed, and that takes about 24 hours to happen
Hmm. This is going on in
in
each cell in our body.
in the cells, yes. So the cells in your body have these, most of them, that we know. So many cells have timing mechanisms, period. But the ones that are like drivers of the circadian rhythms, and these are in many tissues, so like the retina, the cortex, the liver, the heart, the lungs, like so many tissues, right, have these clock genes, muscles identified, right? And they have this cyclical production of RNA and protein that fluctuates within 24 hours every day. And it's not exactly perfectly 24, it's close to it. And this is where that external input comes from with the day night cycle to make it perfectly 24 hours every day. And now I'm thinking about it, I might not have completely answered an earlier question, which is, how can you recover from this if it's like messed up, right?
Mm.
And so, because your body is constantly checking its environment to ensure that it's well aligned or coordinated with it, as long as you go back into the correct environment, as long you should be able to reset everything. So the habits of, staying up late and those types of things is just going to keep fighting against the system. But once you start to say, okay, it's dark outside, let me turn off the lights. It's light outside, let me get out my bed. And you start to, coordinate your actions more with what's going on the planet. Then your body will start to say, yeah, this is what we've been asking you to do. And it's going to feel more correct and work together in a more coordinated manner.
See, the organs in our body, different cells, because I know you're saying that when the sun comes up, that's our external factor coming in and kind of causing this high transcription rate to begin within some of the cells. That's going to eventually go to a low transcription rate and repeat itself in a cycle.
Hmm.
Is this occurring? I'm thinking this occurring at different times since all the organs are different, or is this all happening at the same
All right, good
time?
thought. Yeah, so each organ and each tissue has their own clock. And again, it's a set of genes, and they have different times throughout the day that they have their peak expression and their, trough. And so there are a set of genes that are known to be part of what's called a transcriptional translational feedback loop. But these genes, if you look at all the different clocks, they're not all synchronized per se, but you could see them that they're all rhythmic, right? And the tissues that are liver or heart or, these different types of tissues, they're actually communicating with the brain. And the brain has the ability to get information from the environment to know when the sun came up. So in the hypothalamus, there's actually a nucleus called a suprachiasmatic nucleus that's known as the master clock or the main or well characterized region of the brain that gets light information and dark information from the environment and then tell the rest of the body and brain what's going on and then coordinates the whole system and all the little clocks over the body.
I see. And you mentioned specifically the kidney and the heart. I don't know if they have a closer or they're more sensitive to the external environment than other organs.
Not particularly. I'm just literally throwing out two names.
Okay.
There's pancreas, different ones.
Sure. And then so this cycle of protein synthesis, how is it disrupted by the amount of sleep specifically? Let's say you're going to bed at 10 and you're getting up, maybe 3:30, 4 o'clock consistently.
Hmm.
And I don't know, maybe you're in a location to where you go to bed, it's dark at 10, but when you get up, there's lights around you, so your body's it's intaking that. Is it affected by the amount?
Of sleep. So sleep is not necessarily something that I would say regulates the circadian rhythms, but it is regulated by circadian rhythms, if that makes sense. And so, sleep, well, we should talk about how sleep works. So, sleep, there's a timing to it, there's a homeostatic amount that is beneficial. It's a drive, or basically, your brain tells you that you need to sleep, and that's due to a buildup of adenosine, right? And so when your body has this buildup of adenosine, which happens when you use a lot of ATP and break down that molecule for energy usage, and now you have like a byproduct, and it's like, hey, we've done a lot of work today. We need to rest. That plus the timing, which the circadian rhythms tell you, is when you should sleep, right? But sleeping off itself is not necessarily controlling the rhythm. That's why this is my hypothesis that you can't just sleep whenever you feel like it and then your body's clock system works, right? So it's not just that sleep itself is the thing that makes you have a clock. That's not true. The clock tells you when doing that function is best. And sleep sleep is a very well known function that is related to circadian rhythm control, but other things are important too. You mentioned metabolism and endocrine system and all of that, and that is done best at certain times of the day, right? So, like digesting your food and insulin production and different hormones, and when they're most useful for your body is not all 24 hours. So, these different functions, when they're supposed to happen, like sleep, have most beneficial times of the day. So, this is why the clock is such a coordinating system to tell you when to do things.
Got you. So if I'm understanding correctly, the circadian rhythm, I'll call it the CR.
Sure.
The CR um, helps with the time to go to sleep,
Uh-huh.
but it's not affected by the hours itself, but rather it's part of that plus the adenosine that you mentioned, which is that cleared out during sleep or
Yeah,
converted?
it is. So your body, as I said, knows has an idea of how much sleep it needs, right? So, and you might have heard about the sleep stages and cycles. So like that helps you to get that restorative sleep. And so the adenosine buildup helps to tell your brain, I need sleep. Circadian timing tells you when to go to sleep. And while you sleep and get what your brain feels like you need, which for most people is somewhere between 6 and 8 hours, um, your brain does clean up your metabolic waste. So this is like
This could only happen during
sleep.
one of the.
Yeah, and sleep at night. So this is what's called the glymphatic system,
Okay.
which is one of the things, newer things that I've learned in the last couple years, and my mind was blown. But yeah, basically your brain gets rid of a lot of waste while you sleep and sleep according to your circadian rhythm. So the daytime napping and the making up the sleep later doesn't work for this, but it only works at nighttime because that process is regulated by the rhythms too. So think about it as the trash collector system comes around at night to clean up your brain. And if you're not sleeping, well, trash stays.
No, man. I was listening to a oh, what's his name? I was listening to a well-known psychiatrist that gave that analogy. Although I didn't understand, you just open it up more. Dr. Amen, I think it was. He's a well-known. But that
Okay.
trash system, he was talking about that trash system being in place while we sleep.
Yeah.
And but you're saying it's the adenosine being cleared out by the glymphatic system.
Well, it's not just adenosine per se. So it's metabolic waste. So your brain goes through a lot of chemical reactions all day when you're thinking and, trying to do different activities. And it needs some time to basically get back to normal. You can think of it that way.
Mm.
So people are thinking that, like if you have foggy brain or even if you start to develop like things like Alzheimer's, they're thinking it's related to this system either being inefficient or not have been in use enough as you're going through life, and that over time you're having more um, severe effects from not having the system functioning optimally.
Wait, not being used in the sense where the individual wasn't getting proper sleep during
Yeah,
that
proper
time.
sleep and allowing this cleanup to happen, right?
Oh,
So that's what people are thinking it's linked to. Of course, that's a very longitudinal study to do.
yeah.
Basically, it's very important for a high functioning brain is what is found when the system works.
Hmm.
That's the first part of this mini series. Come back next time for the second part. Thanks for joining us today. Please visit our website at clocktips.com for more information about this podcast, how to join our ongoing research study, and more resources to help you improve your time intuition, sleep, and productivity. If you found this information helpful or interesting, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with others and join the discussion on our social media platforms under the handle at MyClockTips. Until next time, take care of yourself.